with Joran Opfeld, and gosh, a lot to be thankful for. We've just had this really great Thanksgiving weekend, and everybody's kind of coming back and getting back into the groove. And I was thinking before we came in today that wouldn't it be nice if we were kind of in the groove all the time? And what I mean by that is, okay, we're not going to get in the groove all the time. Life is, like a rope. You take it and you shake it, and it goes like this, and it's all up and down. You can't really predict it. But what if that we were tuned in to a point where we could find ways to create purpose in whatever we were doing? So when we're at work, we're still like in the groove. When we're off of work, we're still in the groove. When we're with our family, we're in the groove. We're in a grocery store, we're in the groove. And I think that's kind of the idea behind day questing, right? Is to ask enough of the time, what is the groove? And am I in it? And what would it be like if I was in it right now? So just asking that question, what would my life be like if I was like right in the groove right now? And just taking a minute to kind of allow the mind and the body, the mind-body, as I call it, the mind-body-spirit, to tune into that and tune into all of those forces of which we are a part, the great natural world in which we happen to be born into, right? So much to be grateful for. One of the things that I did want to mention before we get started in talking more with Joran is I was very blessed this weekend to be able to participate in an action of active hope. There was an event in conjunction with 350.org, the climate change site, and supporting the efforts going on in Paris right now, the United Nations Conference on Climate Change and mitigating climate change effects, which in my mind, there's no greater issue, there's no greater thing on the earth right now than changing the direction that we're going. It's just so important. So there was an event so I'm proud to say there was an event in St. Petersburg, a march that took place. Actually, it was a silent march. About 100 people gathered, and I'm very grateful to the organizers, the local organizers, David DeRemus and Teresa Miller and Douglas Benar, and some other folks who put it together, Marianne Holtz, and all the people who came. There are people who came from up above Crystal River. That's over 100 miles. They said they came 100 miles in Citrus County to be part of this. There were people there who had never done anything like this in their lives, and they were in their 70s. And the one fellow got right down on the ground with me. I was making a poster. He got right down on the ground with me and started helping me to make the poster, and he and I became friends throughout, right? And a neat story about that is his wife came with him. I said, well, why are you here? He was talking about being here because he's been following the issue for a long time, and he understands that it's going to affect the grandchildren, and he's not going to be around. He's one of these people who is planting the seeds today for a tree that's going to grow and provide shade that he will never get to sit under. And that's the kind of future focus I believe we need to have. And it was great because his wife was a longtime conservative, and she was of the same age, and she had never voted outside of her party before. But we were having a discussion by the end of the day about how she could strategically join another party so that she could vote for that candidate in the primary, and then she didn't think she was actually going to go back to her original party. She thought she was actually going to change to an independent. But it was very interesting seeing, how she was shifting too, and to go past many shoppers and people on their day they were nodding their heads. Some of them were scratching their heads. Some of them were interested. I could see them mouthing the words climate justice. What is that? One fellow, I only had one fellow who was more antagonistic, and that he yelled from across the street, "Burn more coal!" So we smiled and waved, as the good Buddhist monk would tell us to do, right? But it was a wonderful event, and it's that kind of thing that Joanne Macy calls active hope. This is a big, huge problem, and when we project out far enough, it looks pretty bleak, right? And it's important, Joanna Macy says, and others, and I believe, that we find ways to create influence. That's a part of I think responding to what life is calling us to do, because we're feeling what's happening. We understand what's happening, but we feel what's happening too. And when we feel what's happening, we allow our emotions to move us. Emotions. So it's really important, and it's a part of my practice and what I do in my mental health practice of encouraging mindfulness and mindfulness classes and all that. But it's tuning into the moment so that we're catching those subtle signals and taking action on them, listening to our joyful positioning system as well as our grief positioning system, because both of those things and all of our emotions are what's influencing that needle and telling us what direction we might want to go in, and when we're off course and when we're on course. So it's integrating all of that. So I'm very grateful for that particular event, and all of my family and my partner Lynn Spinney for supporting me in those efforts, and just so much to be grateful for, really. And very grateful, as a segue, to have Joran Apfel, marketing person, right? That's one of the things you do for work, right? And also a consultant for marketing, and is also the founder of something called the Integral Church here in St. Petersburg, which is a spiritual community that is radically inclusive, post-religious, spiritually minded, and open to all beliefs.
I like that.
Yeah, you might have read that. Or non-beliefs, and who are, as a group, committed to personal transformation, community service, and religious literacy. Yeah, well,
I know I wrote that part.
Yeah, you did. You
The
wrote
first
all
part
that.
I don't know about.
No, you did. Or somebody did, because I got it off your website, which, by the way, is integralchurch.org.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Getting all that stuff out there.
Yes. Thank
So
you.
welcome,
Thank you,
Joran.
Michael, so much for having me. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. So maybe we could start off, Joran, by talking just a little bit about like how you got here. How did you come to?
I came down 4th Street.
You did,
and
yeah. Great. You followed the grid.
It was super easy.
All right, we're done.
I used my JPS to get here.
Very good. Excellent. Did you, when you were growing up, did you think you were going to be a minister, a reverend of a church?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I can say that with 100% certainty.
Mm-hmm.
This was a surprise, and at the same time, it was a very, very slow and deliberate unfolding that happened. And ultimately, in 2013, broke open inside of me and said, "You got to do something, because everything you're doing feels wrong or inauthentic.
Right.
If you're not also doing X." And X turned out to equal growing my own spiritual community that was interfaith in nature, that wasn't hierarchical, that was holarchical, that was peer-to-peer, that wasn't, in computer postmodern language, it's not, client-server relationship, it's peer-to-peer. And if Napster can do it, why can't religion do it, right? So I decided I needed to build something And if people were attracted to that model and that method of, quote unquote worship or celebration or community, then so be it. And we would just see what happened. And
Wow.
decided I would go down to, it was Straub Park at the time, on a Sunday morning and just sit there with some incense and some books and meditate. And if nobody showed up, at least I would have a beautiful morning. And 5 people showed up. And then the next time, 8 people showed up. And so it's just continued to grow. And now 3 years later, we've got, between 20 and 25 people at some points attending these services that are bi-monthly.
Okay. And so it sounds like it's certainly growing. Other people have this same kind of searching for a spiritual, a way to express themselves spiritually that, is all of those things that you said.
Right.
And I want to explore some of those things that you're talking about. Let me just go back because of the focus of this show and ask you about that feeling that you had. How did you describe it? It almost sounded, because you said it broke open. It sounded like it was almost like an egg or something not so nice that like you really needed to come out. It really was.
Or a boil.
Yeah, but it was a
Absolutely.
a blessing. Like a bursting.
Yeah.
And that you were feeling that for quite some
I
time.
was feeling bloated and swollen for
Wow.
quite some time.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
And stiff and
Mm.
stuck. And
Yeah.
all those other things that we call it.
Yeah.
Right? When
Yeah,
we're
stuck.
ready to transition, when we're ready to kind of transcend and include, when we're ready to shift into the next thing, we don't know what it is yet, but we're in pain or suffering, or we can't put our finger on it.
Mm.
And it feels like maybe there's something under our seat and we can't get comfortable.
Mhm.
Work life feels rote, relationships could turn sour, and it's all shed. It's all reflection of you. It's all like, what are you bringing to the experience? So you've got to look at yourself and say, okay, well, what can I do now to improve what I see around me? Because
Right.
everything's a reflection of me. So it's in those moments that you finally have some clarity and can, hopefully create time and space for yourself to really come up with a plan, or the plan just happens and you're along for the ride, and then you're like, okay, here I am.
Yeah.
Now this is better, but it happens.
Or some other options I can think of, or you choose to try and deny, negate,
Right.
and numb that feeling, and that takes you on a whole another different kind of a path.
Sure. Simply through denial or through medication or a turning away instead of a turning toward.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm really impressed with this part of the story as being really valuable and while acknowledging the value of that discomfort.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right. It's when we can't tolerate that discomfort that we do those other things.
Right.
We turn away from it, and somehow developing a tolerance for that, of an ability to listen to what that message is really a valuable part until it speaks so loudly. And for most of us, that's the way it happens. It doesn't happen with a pinprick. It usually happens with some kind of a 2x4 across the top of the head a lot of times, because oftentimes we will go down that path. The other path, drinking whatever,
Sure.
Other explorations that we end up learning are just really dead ends and distractions. And sometimes it'll take some other great awakening in a negative way.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to manifest as addiction either. It could just manifest as not communicating. Sometimes just
Right.
talking to yourself in the shower, in the car, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to somebody else is, ideal because you're able to kind of, experience that interpersonal other and get into that kind of we energy and feel that a little more. And that tends to shake things loose. But even just talking out loud sometimes is enough, to jar it loose and get it moving around.
That's really important, getting out of our own head.
Right.
Because it's all an echo chamber up there. And then having the courage, for one, or the connections, where the trusted connections that will allow that kind of expression. And gosh, having a place to go, like an open-minded church,
Right.
right?
Sure.
Is a valuable place, a valuable
I think
service.
so,
That
you
can,
know?
that can,
And then what we deal with currently is the fact that we chose to call it a church, even.
Right.
And that word resonates so strongly with people who are stuck at kind of traditional and modern interpretations and understandings of that word, that they're not coming to it from either a postmodern or a post-postmodern, an integrative or integral level of understanding. And the word church just simply means a group of people, right? A body of people. And so they're associating with that hierarchical old white man telling me what to do and what to think and what to believe, and it is definitely and decidedly not that.
right.
And we sit in a circle, we face each other, and
Mhm.
nobody, I mean, it's a facilitated, we have a service that we go through, there's a flow, but there's no, leader, So
But you are the reverend, you're the minister.
I'm one of the ministers, yeah, and I'm you'd call it the primary minister. If we don't have a guest speaker for that service, I'm usually the guy doing the talking when it comes time to have a discussion about a certain topic. And usually those topics are about spirituality, spiritual practice, religion, religious teaching, sacred texts, whatever. It's just all, religion and spirituality is just how we approach and understand mystery, right? The great other. So that's what we talk about.
Right. So,
And in an interfaith setting, and honoring the distinct separate faith traditions in the circle. So there could be a Buddhist and an atheist and a Christian and a Catholic and a Presbyterian and
wait a minute, are we walking into a bar? Because
absolutely, right.
That's the next line on it.
Absolutely, and it's not a joke. It's the punchline is that's what happens when you're not an asshole, right? That's, everybody gets along, and it's okay.
Yeah. Wow. So what's a service look like? So you're kind of describing it.
Yep.
Is it an interaction? Are you talking?
There are portions of the service that are interactive. There are portions of the service which are wide open for anybody to discuss and respond to the topic at hand. There are portions of the service where somebody might be performing a song or singing or leading meditation or leading a prayer or something like that. And there's definitely not a sense of you've got to be quiet, but I think that happens naturally when that experience is upon you.
I think so.
You are still and you are reverential toward what you're receiving. But there's no sideways glances at people who are shifting in their seat or anything like that.
Right.
And there is also a portion of the service in the beginning where we do some sharing. It's called the offering of the stones. It's very specific to our service, and it's something that we designed. It's a blend of like a Catholic taizé prayer and a pagan reclaiming ritual, and we bring stones to the service. That's what we bring, and we started a collection. So when you bring your stone to the circle and you offer it to the collection, that's your opportunity to talk about what you're celebrating, that day, that week. Talk about what you maybe need some help, some support through prayer or meditation from the group. If you just need somebody to send you vibes for something you're going through, that can be your chance to ask for that and kind of share from the heart. So there is a section where we're told not to respond to somebody directly, and there's a little bit of rules around that part, but
sure.
The rest of it's open, and the rest of it we're smiling and laughing and moving around and just enjoying each other's company and really learning from each other and about each other's spiritual practice. And that's what's so great about a pluralistic spiritual experience, is that you can then take those teachings and then apply it to how you apply your daily spiritual practice in your own life, which has been really great. There's a lot of learning and a lot of opening happening in the circle.
So what I'm getting is, one of the questions that I had, one of the paradoxes of this is that it's almost as if without people having a groundedness to some degree in some kind of spiritual practice originally, then there's no real pluralism. There's just an exploration. So the pluralism comes from taking different parts from different places. So it does speak to me to kind of a value of the traditional kinds of religions. And
the attempt is to be pluralistic and not syncretistic, not taking everything and putting it in a blender and then spitting out a talk or a prayer that's a combination of Christian and Buddhist and Native American language. The goal is to be truly pluralistic and to move from a Native American teaching, Native American wisdom, to Christian scripture, to Buddhist teaching, and honor those faiths and those paths and those practices.
so that's
Keep them
interesting.
intact.
So in a sense, you need to have people who are also practicing some other, or grounded in some other religious base. Have I got
They
that
wouldn't
right?
need to be, but if they are bringing a spiritual practice to the circle, then that's going to inform how they're receiving the experience. So, a Buddhist student, or even a Buddhist Shastri or teacher, is going to receive Christian scripture differently from an atheist. So the conversation, if there's time for open conversation, it will be much different based on who's in circle at the time.
And what kind of people are you attracting? Who's coming?
It's a combination of people who, like you said, maybe don't have a practice and they're searching for something. I would hesitate to call them unrooted, but because they're very grounded in, what they do believe. Even an atheist or an agnostic believes what they believe. Everybody believes what they believe, right? Everybody's a spiritual person because everybody has an understanding or a relationship with mystery. It's just how we express that. It's different.
So an atheist is not necessarily a spiritual. It's unspiritual.
Yeah, I don't think so. I just think they're expressing and embodying spiritual principles from kind of a modernist scientific realism, sphere and plane of understanding. They're kind of looking at the universe through a lens that is very monological and very real, very concerned with ultimate reality.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing unspiritual about that. Reality is itself, some might say the very fabric of spirit with a capital S. So to me, I don't consider atheists to be non-spiritual whatsoever. They're just looking through a different set of lenses. And at a different stage of consciousness and from a different state of awareness as well. So,
Okay.
But we're also attracting people who are very rooted in a specific practice and who have maybe rejected or are rebelling against, a structure that they feel doesn't accommodate them or that they don't fit with anymore.
So there's a
handful of former Catholics in the group that,
Okay.
They're very down with ritual, very down with singing together and, having a communion and a community to belong to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's been really great to have that inform what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Because, some consistency in what we do is nice to be able to rely on. And for those of us who maybe don't like to be told what to sing or when to sing or when to stand up or sit down, whatever that tradition might look like. My wife, for example, she doesn't like to be put on the spot and say, "Here, sing these words." Right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to. You can listen, you can enjoy. Mm-hmm. So we're very aware of what everybody's background and what they're comfortable with, and there are levels of participation in the circle because the struggle with a circle is there's no back pew. Usually with a church or with a group experience like that, you can kind of slip in quietly, sit in the back and observe for a while. And as you like it, you come back repeatedly, move a little closer to the front. With a circle, you're just there. You're seeing and you're being seen, and there's no way to kind of hang back. So we're very aware and attentive to the fact that every ritual needs levels, tiers of participation. And then you need to be able to opt out if you need to.
At any time. Sure.
At any time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So there's this creation of some structure, obviously, to keep things going, but it's certainly a flattened, a flat circle. It's not a hierarchical kind of, and there's no talking down or one up or one down. If you're perhaps the leader, the minister at this point in time, one might say you're the first among equals in that role.
First among a group of gender balanced and intergenerational ministers.
Gender balanced and intergenerational.
Right.
Wow. No, there's a big concept.
Well, that's why we call it radically inclusive. Right?
Radically
Because
inclusive. Well,
some people don't.
oh, like, that means that those radicals like women can lead.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing concept, right?
Yeah.
Great, wonderful.
Totally groundbreaking.
Yeah, that's wonderful, wonderful. And your tradition was you are maybe and were more of a traditional Christian. And where did you come from?
I was raised Christian.
Mhm.
I was raised in a UCC church, United Church of Christ. Would go in Medford, Wisconsin. My grandmother would drag me to church every Sunday. I went to vacation Bible school and learned all the Old Testament stories, and enjoyed it and appreciated it for a while until I reached my adolescence and had my own rebellion against that. I remember the day in the library I found Bertrand Russell's Why I Am Not a Christian and read that and thought, oh man, what? I've been duped. I had this completely wholehearted rejection of everything that I've been taught or told. And that combined with, studying quantum physics and the understanding of reality and matter in a way that really there is no solidity to matter, whatsoever. And that reaction to not only scientific thought, but to, the discovery of existentialism and all these other different philosophies that I thought, oh man, there's probably 90% of the world that I haven't even seen. That set me down a path that, of course, led me through Buddhism and Native American traditions, and just recently studying Judaism and Islam, and I've been on a path that has been an attempt to kind of get these voices around the table and get them to talk to me in a way that I'm hearing, the many voices from the many zip codes that God has chosen to show up in. I'm trying to get it all.
And that man is trying to organize in a way that will help people to understand God. And one of the other things I'm coming to realize is the value of traditional religions and the value of any kind of church is that it is something that can be long-lasting enough so that, even dogma can have its purpose, because without dogma, the ideas get diluted and it becomes something else. And it kind of reminds me of John Coltrane, who said something like, it's really important if you want to be a jazz musician that you really have to study the music and know the scales and know classics, and you can do that. Once you have mastered the basics of that, then you can say, screw that.
Right.
And you can start spontaneously creating jazz, but
Yes. Unless
unless you don't have that base, you
And
want.
Arthur Kessler said that the act of creation is forgetting in that moment what we know.
Yeah. So there's this whole idea about.
I compare it to a stick, the stick that you put that the tree or the plant grows up.
Yeah. Right.
It
Keep
has
going.
to be there.
It has
Right?
to be there.
You have
Right.
to stick this
So
stake in the
all
ground, this
this-
rigidity,
this-
right, that gives form and gives directionality to something very fluid and very organic.
So what?
And eventually, you can take that stick away.
So what's going to
It needs to
happen?
be there.
What's going to happen as the number of people who are participating in church goes down and organized religions goes down? What happens to those basics? And if they come to something like the integral church service, how does that work in terms of feeding them? And is the integral church have its own structure and sort of dogma that will keep it alive as well?
I wouldn't say we have dogma.
Hmm.
We do have a handbook that is inclusive of many prayers and ceremonies from various faith traditions. We've outlined a service that we use when we gather together. This will, of course, change over time. But I think in answer to that, I don't think people are rejecting Christianity, per se.
Mm-hmm.
People mainly are rejecting a specific church, a specific structure, potentially even a specific leader, a specific community that they feel isn't serving them or isn't fitting what they need at this point. And I think that part of the problem, and Ken Wilber writes about this, father of integral theory, writes about, he calls it a conveyor belt, and I think this is a horrible, clunky analogy, but the churches move you up to a point, right? They'll bring you up through some of the more traditional religious teachings into maybe some of the modern religious teachings, but when you start getting up into the integrative and the mystical teachings or interpretations of those teachings, the church doesn't support that structure, right? So it only carries you so far. And that's why you have people moving from, say, Islam to Sufism, the mystical interpretation of that tradition, or from Judaism to Kabbalah, Christianity to Gnosticism. You have these different, more mystical expressions.
Because what happens is that as the organization became the focus, then the principles were about creating structure and supporting the organization rather than supporting the individual and their spiritual path.
And for good reason. The Catholic Church needed something. That's why it's called Catholicism. That's why it's the universal. That's what that word means, is universal. Catholic means universal. That's what they needed, was a template that they could put into place so that everybody could attain salvation, right? They needed sacraments. They needed you to be baptized. They needed you to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior. And if you put these three things in place, then you were considered a Christian. Right?
And
it was pretty easy, as opposed to Gnosticism, where you had to sit and pray and practice, contemplative, or what we call now centering prayer, with a teacher, or what we now call a guru, in a cave somewhere, and then eventually maybe he would say that you've awoken to Christ consciousness. That's a whole different approach in Christianity.
Or maybe you would have that experience yourself without an intermediary.
Possibly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Wow. All right. So let me take a break here. This is DayQuest Life, WSPF-DB, RhinoOnAir.com, your favorite friendly internet radio station. I'm Michael Whalen, your host, and we're here talking about religion and integral church, the value of tradition religions with Joran Appelt. Great discussion. So I'd like to kind of shift it just a little bit from the general to some more specifics. And one of the things that we were talking about before is that there's not a lot of specific rites and rituals for men.
Right. Absolutely.
In our culture, we do have them. You get keys when you're 16. It's not necessarily for men, but it's a rite of passage. It's when you are put in charge of a vehicle which can kill people. You're allowed to drink mind-altering beverages at a particular age. We have an unwritten and uncelebrated rite of passage called circumcision, which is non-ritual circumcision. We have a rite of passage called the draft, which, even though it's not active, you still have to sign up for the draft, or you cannot get a college loan. So these are all some of the subterranean, and then there's high school football and sports and binges and fraternities and all the other stuff, that hazings, that are part of a subterranean ritual passage acknowledgement for men. So we don't have a lot of.
I would include even the unspoken rights that are, just being acknowledged or appreciated or told that you're loved by your mother or your father, being seen by them, right, for who you truly are as an adult, as a person, as something independent and individuated from the family unit. Just having that acknowledgement is something that so rarely happens, right?
Well, we have commencement. That's kind of a universal. High school commencement is one actually publicly acknowledged universal, and a recognition for that sort of thing. So that can be an encapsulation of, but within religions, of course, there are different, there are more ritualized kinds of things that go on. So what's your viewpoint on that further? What kind you do? As a matter of fact, I'm recalling now that as a part of your ministry, you do fatherhood rights.
Me too. And that, it's actually an interesting story because that predates the ministry, that predates the church. That's something that happened for me 10 years ago when I had my daughter. My stepfather held what we call a man shower for me, and gathered a bunch of men from the community.
No, wait a minute. Your stepfather had a man shower for you?
That's right.
Really?
It sounds unsavory, but it was a really, really beautiful thing.
Unless the showering is a showering of blessings, so that's what you're
And
talking
that's exactly what it was. I was surrounded by my friends who supported me in my making the conscious decision to become a father. I was surrounded by a handful at the time of my friends who already were dads. And also, this is really important, talking about bringing in that intergenerational wisdom, by some of the elders in my community, including my stepfather, who poured into me the, things that they wished their dads would have told them, So it was a really beautiful thing. And when it was all said and done, and they made offer, they brought me, it wasn't like what do you think about baby shower, where the gifts are for the baby. This is for me. This is a true rite of passage for me. For women, you can have what's called a blessing way too. That's very about celebrating the mother and about that transition. And about for the mother, it's about opening and about being receptive and about carrying that life and about being the vessel that is what life comes through, the membrane that life comes through when it enters the universe. And she is that. For the men in our, in our ritual, it's very about standing and being the awareness. If the divine feminine is the ultimate allowing, let's say the sacred masculine is the ultimate awareness, right? Standing in that presence, being authentic, being a leader, being the head of the family, stepping into that and owning that, being responsible for that. Really understanding what that means in your relationship to your partner, really giving to them. She needs, a foot rub or the dishes done or something picked up because she can't bend over. You're there to do that too. We really just kind of give them the 101 on the first 6 months, because when you're a dad, really the first year is kind of a throwaway. The baby doesn't really need you, right? Because you're not providing food or any kind of warmth to it. So
directly,
because it's not living inside of you.
Right.
So it gets to know your smell and your voice and all of that. And so when you're finally ready for that baby to run and jump and for dad to be fun time, you haven't built up this resentment like, oh well, now it's finally time for me to tag in. You know what I mean? You're prepared for that period of just standing and being aware. So there's some specific things that we have in that ritual that we do for dads. It's typically held out at sacred lands in nature, and it's I think a very important thing.
So you invite elders from the family
Absolutely.
and from the neighborhood, or gather those men together for that. Well, that's a really important and I would say a missing element, and that you're providing. I think it's a great service. The baby shower for the mother, even though it's based a lot about bringing gifts for that, it still is an honoring. There's often an intergenerational component. There's a great honoring of the mother generally, and her trials and trips going through and what they can expect. So that's the way our culture has encapsulated through a consumeristic kind of viewpoint.
Sure.
But it makes perfect sense, though. It brings security, knowing that you're going to have some of these things bring in. It's not a bad thing. But boy, to have something like this on a regular basis become more a part of the fabric of our culture, I think is a really important way of honoring not only men, but men's place, and having that acknowledged and validated. It can only improve the connections that a man's going to have with his partner.
That's right.
And with his children, of course, coming from with himself, and then the assurance and the security of knowing that there are other men that he can go to, other men that he can ask about, and the younger men can see that they are a part of a community as well that does not have to be centered in sports or accomplishment.
Right.
through business or other things, just being a part of life is so very valuable and important all by itself.
And again, a symptom of modernism, where it's very structured and it's very achievist and it's very game-based and very rule-based, right? Unlock the prize or win the game or, bring home the medal, instead of the postmodernist structure, which is, peer-to-peer and sitting with a community of others. And how often do men just hang out? And when they do, what are they talking about? They're talking about the weather, they're talking about sports. They're not talking about their authentic presence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you keep using the word postmodern, and whenever you say postmodern, then you describe it, and I think indigenous.
Right.
I think, wait a minute, this is what we used to do.
Sure. Well, tribal, tribal is pre-modern. Tribal is pre-traditional. If we go from survivalistic to tribal to to warrior values and kingdom-based values, and then into traditional values where good and evil and right and wrong and my country right or wrong, that kind of thing, where just those values show up, and then you finally get into modernism and postmodernism. You got to move through all those other things first.
Okay.
That's spiral dynamics.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's the spiral dynamics.
Well, that's in the handbook, right?
Yeah, it is.
By the way, integralchurch.org is where you can find out more all about this. There's a page, a FAQ page. What do you believe? The interconnectedness of all things unfold in time through stages that cannot be skipped. We believe that what connects us within and without is spirit, and the degree of consciousness that is present in all things is what we call spirit in action. I like this one also. We believe that the God experience looks, sounds, tastes, and feels different to each person, depending on their culture, geography, and their worldview. Yeah. Being in love with the way that God has continued to be expressed in the world and has continued to be revealed throughout history. Beautiful. Beautiful. And there's more. There's more there.
Absolutely.
And
it's, and it's important to note, we were referring to atheists earlier, and how they interpret these teachings, religious teachings. You could say Integral Church, and it really was, co-founded by an atheist. It was myself and my friend Joey, who she basically painted me into a corner and said, well, what are you going to do about this? And I said, well, I want to start a community. I want to, share these teachings with the world in an integral and a pluralistic way that honors all the traditions, but is open and radically inclusive. So she and I sat down and basically wrote what were the beginnings of the mission and value statements and the beginning documents of what was to become the handbook. So church co-founded by an atheist.
What was the energy?
To know.
So the atheist was, who was the atheist in the room? Are you talking about?
My friend Joey.
Joey. Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to say about that is that when we use the term atheism or atheist, it can be translated into a monolithic kind of definition, generalization that kind of has its own conceptual picture for people. But I think it's important to note that every person who does not believe in a deity, a specific deity, and every atheist has their own different and particular ways and slants of coming into this.
Right. Well, considering that Buddhism doesn't have a theology, that Buddhism doesn't even attempt to solve for the God question. In fact, it calls it the arrow of suffering. The fact that you're going to continue to question and go down that line of inquiry about a God or a creator. Considering that Buddhism just kind of refutes theological philosophy in general, you could call Buddhists atheists if you wanted, if that's the definition you're using. I mean,
Because it's not a specific deity.
Right. Atheists show up in many different ways, as humanists and as the new atheists, the really Christopher Hitchens is in the really judgmental and forceful atheists that we now see as authors or spokespeople.
Self-advocating.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
Just as we see in other
Very
religions
assertive.
too. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes that energy in the course of history is necessary in order to have a particular viewpoint heard,
that's right.
understood, or even validated or acknowledged as being something that is other than marginal.
And
So-
you were talking about politics earlier. That it's a fallacy.
I wasn't.
It's a fallacy to think that Democrats are typically liberal and Republicans are typically conservative. There's a spectrum of liberalism and conservatism within each political party.
Mhm.
And that's where you see things like socialism and libertarianism popping up as responses to, or symptoms of, those impulses within each of those parties.
Yeah, so it's a recognition. I come from a rehabilitation counseling aspect, which uses people first language.
Right.
So it's a recognition of the personhood
Mhm.
first, and then the dogma, the particular party line. Let's talk about the issues and
Right.
the way that we can solve the issues or
Exactly.
approach the issue rather than the easy way. I think it's easy. I think it's a sign of intellectual being lazy to just jump on the dogma.
Right.
Or to jump on the political talking points. Let's talk about it.
Absolutely.
Let's sit down and let's feel about it. Let's not just do what's in our head. Let's also understand, take time out for and pay attention to what's happening in our bodies as we tune in to what effects our words might have as we're putting this out there, because we can get pretty energetic. And there's a lot of great brain science about how this happens and how that makes us a part of you being human beings, and what role religion plays in that neurologically, and how we get caught up in it. So okay, I would like to. That was a different slant. I'm not sure where we were going with that one. I want to make sure that we talk about some of the. We have time to talk about some of the programs that you do, but I wanted to ask you if you wouldn't mind, before we get into that, if you wouldn't mind reading the Thanksgiving blessing that you.
I'd be honored.
This is going to be our poetry moment.
Nice.
By the way.
Okay.
I think you have another poem. If we have more time
No,
for
that's
that,
fine.
we can
This
do
is
that.
great. I didn't get to read it. I didn't get to give a really long, superfluous blessing at the meal this year. So this would be great. I read this last year at an interfaith service that we did. Let's see. Yeah, this is the interfaith Thanksgiving prayer that's on our website. Let's see here where it begins. Oh, right here. We gather today to give thanks for all the things that we sometimes take for granted. Our bodies, perfect and beautiful at whatever stage they are at. Our minds, open and receptive to compassion and understanding. Our health, our well-being, the health and well-being of our families. The love and support of our family and friends. The interconnected community in which we live and thrive. All of this year's unfolding and new growth, all of our milestones and our victories and success, as well as the loss and the obstacles that we've overcome and the lessons we've learned along the way. On this day, we are thankful just for the ability to spend time together around the table for a moment, face to face, without the illuminated distractions of our phones and screens. We're thankful to be in the presence of family, to love and be loved. We are thankful for the resource of spirit in our lives, for our faith that allows us confidence, comfort, and resolve in the face of ignorance, suffering, attachment, and those inevitable dark nights. We're thankful for the teachings of the masters and the great wisdom traditions, and for the teachers themselves in what is surely one of the highest of callings. We are also grateful. We're grateful for our ability to give to those less fortunate. We are grateful to those serving, our country, and to those active in the work of building or rebuilding here and around the world. To those that have passed on and are unable to be with us today, but from whom we have learned so much, and to our children and descendants to enable us to transcend the limitations of space and time. We also ask for blessings. Bless the hands that harvest and prepare this Thanksgiving meal. Bless any animals who have given their lives for it. Bless the earth from which it came. And bless us as we receive it. Bless us as we celebrate with the gifts of language, art, and music. Bless us with renewed strength to navigate this world mindfully, sustainably, and peacefully, that we may be both a beacon and a compass to those in need of an example. We ask for your original blessing, and we may continue to be blessed with fruitfulness and multiplicity. And finally, thank you. Thank you for the ability to learn and love and laugh and grow. Thank you for the opportunity to be in the world and to create change in the world here and now, simply by changing ourselves. Thank you for life and this joyful act we call living. Amen.
Oh,
Oh,
and so it is.
yeah.
And I just want to invite everyone, including us here, to just tune into where you're feeling this in your body right now. And just allow yourself to feel that. You know, I was feeling a warmth, and I'm feeling a warmth in my heart and in my belly. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Jaron, for bringing those beautiful, beautiful words
Thank you for asking me to read that.
today.
It's been
really
a year since I read that out loud, so it's very nice.
very nice. Yeah, we do have time. Is that poem long? Is it-
Well, I can just kind of tell people about it. And they
Okay,
can go
yeah,
check it
yeah,
out for
please.
themselves,
That's great.
'cause,
I love
it's
that.
rare that I'm on any kind of show that I don't have an agenda or something to promote.
Right.
Usually it's Interfaith Week, which happens in September, or it's Alchemy Fest, which is coming up again in April.
Alchemy Fest.
Yeah, that's our big family-friendly art music festival.
Fantastic.
Food, yoga, meditation kind of thing.
And music.
And music. Oh, yeah,
Yahoo!
lots of good
April
music.
17th.
Yeah, that's the hold we have on the date for this year. It's
Okay.
Sunday, April 17th. So
That's wonderful.
Definitely go
Talking about those kinds of
to the
events.
site to learn more. But right now, it's the only thing I have to talk about is this book that I'm putting out. I'm self-publishing this book in time for the holidays to give as gifts for my family. When I was in a band, I was, it was what album did I put out this year, and everybody knew what they were getting for Christmas because it was that CD, And now it's which book are we getting this year? So the new one's called Sentences, and it's just a collection of prayers and affirmations and poetry and meditations, and it's available at joranslane.com right now. That's
SLANE,
Yeah.
Joran, JORAN, Joran,
Yeah.
Slane, SLANE.com.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
Just click on books, and then it's the newest title. It's called Sentences, and it's available right now as a PDF, and we'll be printing up some hard
Okay, so
copies for the next year.
wonderful.
Yeah.
I can't wait. I'm going to get my own sneak peek
There you
here.
go,
Yeah. And then your other connection information for the Integral Church and such?
I mean, we have a Facebook page, and we're on Twitter. So, the easiest way is just to go to integralchurch.org and, sign up for our newsletter. We have an email newsletter that goes out every month. Tells you about these events and some other interfaith events that happen in the community as well. So, encourage people to sign up for that.
And actually, if you're interested, this is a great time because this week, December 3rd, there is an interfaith service at the Trinity Multicultural Center at 1150 49th Street North. Again, this information is available on integralchurch.org. And then this month's interfaith service in the park,
Yeah.
Crisp Park,
Crisp Park, yeah.
620 37th Avenue Northeast, is December 20th. That's Sunday,
And
right?
it's always, the indoor chapel service is always the first Thursday, and the outdoor morning park service is always the third Sunday.
And I've seen photos of it. I haven't been myself, but it looks and it sounds like a wonderful experience.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
looking forward to
listeners will
getting
have
there.
a nice little sneak peek of the service, and hopefully we made it sound fun and interesting.
I hope so.
Because we talked a lot about the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Oh,
Thank you so much, Jaron, for being here and for your great work in the community. I know Interfaith Week is a proclamation that the city of St. Petersburg, it's an annual event.
Yeah.
I think that happens in the summertime.
In September.
September.
Yeah, and that's
so-
a chance for people to kind of visit other faith communities and see how other people worship. We call it how other people celebrate the sacred. We encourage families to go to a mosque or a synagogue or a church they've never been, and
It's
go
kind of
to
like a long, extended spiritual potluck
yeah,
through the
exactly.
week. You go and you
There's lots
sample
of
a
shared
little bit of
meals. Yeah, that's the 4 S's of interfaith. There, sup together, which is share a meal together.
Okay.
Serve together, study together, and
Dessert.
I forget what the 4th S is, but it's on the website.
Service, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you again, Jaron.
Yeah.
My pleasure. So thank you all for listening. Thank you to our producer,
Yes. Thank you.
Anne Marie. So wonderful to be here again with you. Thank you. Thank you all for listening and tuning in to DayQuest The Life Radio Hour on WSPF-DB. I want to encourage you to please tune in on December 15th. Our next show is in 2 weeks. It's always the first and third Tuesdays of the month at 3:06 p.m. or anytime you want, because we're like on YouTube and podcasts on WSPF. And you can go to my website, which is dayquestlife.com, to find out more information about Joanne and links. And our next guest will be on December 15th. Will be a wonderful author and poet and healer and wonderful woman, Therese Toponi. I guarantee you will.
Gifts of Grief.
Gifts of Grief.
Yeah, I read it.
Her latest book, The
Okay.
Gifts of Grief.
Yeah.
And a great blog writer. She'll be here then. You won't want to miss that as well. If you want any information about my practice, my mental health counseling practice, just please go to dayquestlife.com, or you can call me at 727-341-9397. And check out rhinoonair.com for amazing streaming local indie music and other great shows. So until next time, I wish you all common health, common wealth, and beauty.
Very good here. Give me one more second.
All right.
And
There we go.